And now, live from Jerusalem, you're listening to Israel-Inspired Radio. Here are your hosts, Rabbis Ari Abramowitz and Jeremy Gimpel.
Shalom, and you were listening to Israel Inspired on the Land of Israel Network. This is Ari Abramowitz here, finally back on the air with Jeremy Gimpel. Jeremy, it is good to have you.
It is good to be here broadcasting from the mountains of Judea once again.
It's been a long time, and sometimes I feel like it builds up on itself. There's so many dramatic, exciting things that happen in our lives that happen out here, and time sort of, it's taken a serious amount of acclamation, and it's come at the expense of our show. And I feel like sometimes so much time goes by and all these things are aggregating and so many things. It's like, how will we ever catch people up? And it's just, it adds to not putting out a show. And we just said, you know what, let's just get out there. Where are we right now?
Where are we right now?
What's happening right now? So that's what we're doing. It's great to be back here with you. I think this is an important foundational building block of our friendship. And so anyways, Jeremy, let's start with you. Tell me, I mean, you've been doing a lot of things. Sometimes we're in the internal mode, introspection, working on growing, and then sometimes we burst forth and want to broadcast. You spent a good year out at this farm, really, like, as you say, your own words, in the fetal position, scared. And it was a huge, anyone would have been. I think you did a fantastic job.
It was just like a
But
cocoon.
now you're starting to come out of the cocoon. To come out of the cocoon in really cool and interesting and new ways, which shows that a lot of times in my experience, when we go through serious traumas, we are so involved in our own trauma that we don't understand that Hashem is doing something inside of us. We're growing. We're, the growth is almost like exponential. It's like a fruit that falls to the ground, decays and deteriorates, and then the seeds decay and deteriorate. And right as it's just disappearing from the whole trauma, then an entire new thing grows. And so I see what you're doing, and you're putting out these music videos, which I have to say are pretty good. They're really, really, really good. They're great, and it's a new type of expression.
Yeah,
I have a little bit of righteous jealousy that you have this entire another facet of expressing yourself, and you're good at putting those videos together.
Yeah, you and I have been making videos for well over 15 years. I mean, that's what we did in our TV shows, short documentaries, YouTube videos. I mean, we've been making videos forever. And now to combine the music that's come to me while living on the farm and producing it with these Judean musicians that are so talented, and then combining it with the visual capabilities that we've sort of the skill that we've developed over the years, all in one. It's just the most fun thing in the world.
I even get to have little promos in there, here and there. I pushed you into the pool. I played the triangle. Yeah. The open wound of the greatest miss of all of the videos.
Yeah, it's painful.
Say it.
Well, the last video that I did is on Ashrei, which is this really beautiful psalm of King David. And there's one line that says, Aromimcha Elohai HaMelech, I will lift you up, my God, my King. And there's just the image that came to me was a motorcycle, like flying through the sky. Why that's my image of lifting God up, I don't know. That's why it's my music video, because it's my expression. And I had all of these amazing GoPro videos of these people doing 3 backflips while snowboarding and doing all these bike stunts.
Well, first, just back up. You start off on this video where you're doing pretty objectively cool things. When you were in yeshiva, you said you spent a lot of that time in yeshiva actually surfing.
Well, it was the first year of Machina, not yeshiva.
Okay, it was also a yeshiva. Okay,
the desert of Gush Katif. And yeah, I had to make the choice. I could either go surfing on the beach or go to the Beit Midrash and learn. And that was just...
That's where you were. So you learned how to surf.
I learned how to surf.
So you're surfing on this video, you're doing things, and then it sort of transitions to skydiving. And it doesn't say there any sort of disclaimer. This is not Jeremy Gimpel doing triple backflips on this motorcycle through the sky. So people are coming to you and like, you know how to fly off of an airplane in a motorcycle?
Only 3 people have actually asked me, is that actually you doing 3 backflips in the air? And I'm like, you actually think that could possibly be me doing 3 backflips?
And so what would have made that video so beautiful?
Oh, so at the end of the video, I actually take Yossi's motorcycle, his dirt bike, and I drive it through the farm, and then I take off the helmet, and then it's me. And it's like this, fantasy video of me trying to be a GoPro professional professional dirt biker, and then it's like me at the end. But what I wanted was I have a helmet, and I take the helmet off at the end. But I wanted so badly for the helmet to go off, and then for it to be Ari.
Yes,
and that would have just made the video so much better.
It would have been good. It's still a great video. It's still a great video. But you're doing these music videos. Where's that coming from?
I don't know. It just, each video is an expression. I feel like it's a little bit infantile, meaning a lot of the music videos that I see, they almost have narratives and stories to them. And for me, it's much more, I'm just trying to express a certain pathos, a certain emotional, spiritual thing. And so this one was expressed by extreme sports, because I just feel like it's just, every day I will bless you, Lord, lift you up. I just wanted extreme visions.
I even have to say my favorite of the videos has yet to be released.
Oh, really?
You just showed me yesterday.
Oh, that's the newest one that's soon to come out.
I think you should make the little amendments that I told you about.
Yeah, I'm going
little
to.
Things, those are good, but fantastic.
Thank you very much. That's really nice to hear.
Very
Baruch Hashem, my most views outside of the United States are in Japan and Germany. And I find that very significant. Germany is the belly of the beast of all of these secular evils, liberal insanity, which obviously gave birth to the Nazi empire. But today it still infects the world that there is no God. And if you continue to really internalize that, the secular German, there is no God, gives birth to these Berkeley professors and the insane liberal craziness on the coasts of the United States and all of the ills of this world. I really feel like the source of them is Germany. So I take great comfort that my music is most popular
it's
in
ironic
Germany.
Because I just saw a video, maybe I'll insert it here, maybe not, but where there was this German man, he's very well respected in Germany. He says, the minute there's an economic downturn here, don't think that Germany cannot revert. I'm telling you, it can revert back to where it was as far as xenophobia, hatred of Jews. Don't think that they've evolved or graduated from that. But the irony is that there's become this polarization within Germany of tremendous Jew hatred that is growing, and that is very clear and known to all. However, some of the holiest groups that we've had come out here to the farm are Germans. The children and grandchildren of Nazis that have come out here and volunteered to build those stories are, a foundational part of the tours that we give in this place. So it's just interesting to see within the society itself extreme polarization of loving Israel and the Jewish people and returning to hating Israel and the Jewish people, which is an interesting thing.
And so then Germany and then Japan. Japan might as well be on as far away from Israel culturally, geographically as possible. So I that's kind of cool. I'm in the belly of the beast and I'm reaching the ends of the earth with these cool music videos, the Psalms of King David that we're broadcasting from the mountains that David wrote them in. That's just beautiful.
Yeah.
And the ebook is really beautiful too. And people download the album, they get the book, and it's all about prayer. I just love what we're doing here because this place is, even though it's not built yet, it is a place of music. It's a place of prayer. Just this week, we've had a group of Israelis, and in that group of Israelis, there were a bunch of Jews and non-Jews from all over the world that joined the group of Israelis that came out. We had a group from Holland. We had a group from Africa, and they're all just coming here. And it's just marvelous.
I have to tell you, when that day that happened, it was just a few days ago, we had to divide and conquer. Sometimes we like to do tours together, but lately we've had, times that there's so many tours coming, it just makes sense to divide and conquer. You do a tour, I do a tour. So it happened to be that we ended up in the retreat center at this very same time. And so what happened there, you're in one room and I'm in the room next to it, and you're with a group of Africans that are singing incredibly African sounding tribal music.
Every once in a while when I feel like the spirit hitting me, so I'll take out a guitar and we'll just do a Psalm of King David and we'll sing, hallelujah together, because you don't have to know the same language to sing hallelujah. And that's just beautiful. And let me tell you, by far, my favorite group were these Africans. They know how to keep a beat. They know how to, they are just awesome.
But at the same time, the next room over, I have a group from, was it Holland? Holland, and they were singing also. And because I asked them to sing, I feel like it elevates this entire place. It infuses it with holiness when nations from around the world are coming and singing. Yes, we have differences in understanding of how to understand God, but at the same time, it's a language of the heart. And it's a language of dedication. So I'm hearing this group singing the Psalms, and they sounded like angels.
It was like
to the background of African tribal music.
Yeah, they brought out a bongo, and they're like banging on the bongo, keeping this amazing beat. And then the room next door, I'm walking by, it might as well have been angels singing. It was like this high-pitched, melodious. Talk about the opposites of music, and all of it dedicated to God. And I find that just so beautiful that the temple is not called a house of Torah. It's called a Beit Tefillah Lekol Ha'amim, a house of prayer for all nations. And there really is it's the language of the heart. It's what's able to bring people together. And
I even need to say, when I had this group, I was going around, and I think part of what's going on with me right now is I'm going through a little bit of a difficult, confusing, disorienting time. I can point to reasons, but at the same time, it is what it is. And one of the big reasons is that, Shayna and I, we decided that we're going to build our house. We're going, we had like one little bedroom, and we wanted to add bedrooms. We felt like God would bless us perhaps with children if we created the vessel with which he could put the light into. And yes, my father said, wait until after the Supreme Court rules. And we said, no, this is when it matters. So we started building it, but it's hard. It's hard to build a house.
Tell me about it.
It's taking all of my money plus money that I don't even have, which I don't like doing. But at the same time, what am I not going to move into the house because all of these added expenses that I wasn't expecting? So I'm like not only running out of money, but running out of friends and family to borrow money from. But that's okay. It's worth it. It's worth it. But I've been sort of reclusive a little bit in my own experience, in my own world, while you're bursting forth, which is really great. But so I took the tour into my house. And there were all these Arabs there building the house, and then they start singing and praying there.
Oh, that's
and seeing these Arabs freeze. I actually have it on video.
Wow.
Filming the group with the Arabs behind, turning around like, what the heck is going on? What is this about? But not just what's going on. It seemed like there was something was being touched on a soul level there.
Sure.
Maybe I'm projecting that.
No, something is being, you're just listening to those people from Holland sing. They were like professional singers. They were so good.
Yeah, it was so beautiful.
Oh my gosh.
And so I've been building my house, and you've been bursting forth. And one of the things you've done also is the show with Tehillah. And I've been pushing this for years. For years, knowing that I'm in some ways digging my own grave. That if the minute your wife gets on the network, our show is going to be a distant second, which is fine. It's humbling because most of the time when I hear, inspiring or innovative thoughts from you, I assume it's from her.
It is from her. It is from her.
So I haven't heard your show yet. I'm embarrassed to say, but I've heard a lot of people that have heard your show.
Yeah,
I'm excited to hear it.
I'll just tell you, what's so crazy is that the entire year I was living with this horrible guilt feeling of this is such an insane journey, moving 6 children to this mountain. Get out my camera, document it, Jeremy, come on. And I just couldn't take my thumb out of my mouth. I was just crying in a fetal position. I just couldn't do it. I just could not broadcast. I was in too much.
I wouldn't say I'm at that place now, but I'm in that region.
Yeah, you're not even close to what I was at.
I mean,
you're doing great.
You know my personality, who I am. I'm like a very trusting guy, sort of like. So I don't like I'm a people person. I don't like conflict. Me negotiating with these Arabs is like a sheep negotiating with wolves. Okay, and I'm not saying that negatively about them, but they are
good negotiators.
Good negotiators. Yeah, we're definitely in the Middle East.
Yeah,
out here.
And so throughout the whole year, I felt really guilty that I wasn't documenting, broadcasting it. I kept on thinking, man, this would be the most amazing reality TV. Who gets to do this? It's like biblical living with the early Zionist pioneers, just building this mountain together with my children and my wife. Broadcast, Jeremy, broadcast. And I just couldn't bring myself to do it. And now finally, after we're literally celebrating a year this Shabbat, we're going to be hosting a kiddush in the shul.
And what's good about that is it's a perfect confluence with my marriage, meaning you moved out here
the day before you got married.
The day before I got married.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. That's this time in Elul.
Yeah, it's just
is like a very, we'll talk about Elul a little bit. We're in the month of Elul, and that's a time it's a very auspicious spiritual time.
The gift of Tehillah is that every single day she kept a journal of what we did, how we did it. Every once in a while, I would chime in on her journal when I could at least keep my own little journal. I couldn't broadcast it, but I tried to keep things that I knew I would forget, that I didn't want to forget. And now as we're broadcasting this Judean experiment, we're kind of going from the beginning and then reliving it and talking about then, but from the perspective of now. And it's almost just as good. Maybe it's even better. And I love that project. I just feel like we're doing what we need to be doing, because this is the deepest settlement in Judea. It's the newest settlement in Judea. It's very strategic. It's very political. It's very Zionist. But this place is a message. This place is an idea. And it's more important for me to broadcast the idea than actually be the message or build the buildings. The buildings are nice.
More important than building the building.
Building the buildings. We have to broadcast the message. And finally now, I feel like my act is getting together and we are broadcasting the message. But more than that, I barely have cell phone reception here. And this is the headquarters of the Land of Israel Network. And who builds a network headquarters without cell phone reception? But somehow...
Which is why we're pre-recording the show right now and then uploading it.
There's no live feeds here. But, we're here, and just like in the last couple of months, although Ari and I haven't done a show, we're sitting here in groups from Holland and groups from Hungary and groups from America and groups from Tel Aviv, and groups are coming in. Mike Huckabee, the governor, came out here, and the son of Benjamin Netanyahu was here with 25 congressional candidates. And I'm like sitting on a mountaintop without cell phone reception. And it
just happened to be, by the way, a lot of these difficult things that happen are humbling. So I was humbled during this period of time because, I felt I started, even though I say with a full heart that the money that comes into this place through me isn't from me, it's from Hashem 100%. And the groups that are coming out here isn't from me. You can say that, but your heart may be singing a little bit to a different tune. And so it just happened to be that the 1 week that I went to America for the first time in years, which was an important trip for me to take to visit Shayna's Holocaust surviving grandmother, a holy, sweet, loving, incredible woman, that was the week that boom, right? Huckabee comes out, your Netanyahu comes out, and you're like juggling that all on your own. You did a great job with it, but not being there during such an important time was challenging.
It's challenging to be you. That's the truth. You're such a dynamic, charismatic, loving guy. You could confuse yourself and think that it's because of you, and you have to realize that it's all from Hashem and it's because of this place.
It's more because of me than because of you. All right.
So here's what I wanted to talk about.
One other thing. Right before the show, you called me and you said, "Oh, you just found your journals. You found the journals and that you can now share on the show."
Yeah,
and you also sent me a picture from right now of a fossilized fish that was found here on the mountain.
On the mountain, just outside my garden, just on a rock. As someone was walking around. My sister-in-law came here to bring a friend to have some soul searching, and it's just a great place to do that. And she looks down and she sees a fossilized fish in the rock on the mountain. And I'm like, how on earth did that fish get up on this mountain? From Noah's flood? My mother has found seashells here, and I just sort of wrote that off. And I'm like, well, there's seashells, and now there's a fossilized fish.
We are on the top of a mountain.
On top of a mountain. Yeah. I don't know what to make of that. I don't know. It was a really cool picture.
But anyways, go ahead.
All right. Thank you for that little
I want
nugget.
To share,
Great. We found a fossilized fish in the desert mountains. Go figure. Well, either way, it's just great to be back broadcasting here with you, Ari. And I think the magic of this show is that it takes a little bit of a fusion. It's fusing what's happening in Israel, what's happening in our lives, what's happening in the Torah, spiritual, practical, actual. It's all just very real. And right now, we're living in a certain time. When you live by the biblical calendar, you live by the Torah, you are able to sense in the time itself certain energies, certain potentials. If you want a great example for that, in the 10 Commandments, it says that Shabbat is on the 7th day. I don't know. There's a lot of people that are doing Shabbat on the first day of the week, and I think that's a mistake. Shabbat is on the 7th day, and if you start living in that rhythm of the 7th day actually being a day of rest, a day of refreshing, a day of blessing, then you start realizing, oh my goodness, encoded within the day, within the time itself, there's a certain energy of blessing that's just there in Shabbat. Right now, we are in the month of Elul. We are in the month that's right before the high holidays, before the Rosh Hashanah, and it's a time of preparation. The way that I see Elul is it's spring training. It's spring training for the season. That's sort of like the energy that I feel in this month, and it's a time of returning. It's a time of returning to the path that we have set for ourselves. So this is really a month of tshuva. Usually tshuva is translated as repentance, but really the word tshuva comes from the word return. And the first time that the word tshuva or return in that context is mentioned in the Torah, it's Veshavta ad Hashem Elohecha. Just in these week's parshas in the book of Devarim, this idea of returning to God appears. And this return to God in the Torah, it's beautifully placed as a return to the land of Israel after the exile, after we've been bad. We're returning to God. And as we're returning to God, we're also returning to the land. And somehow a return to this land is a return to ourselves. Somehow the outside world of the return is also a reflection of the inside world. And, my father is a psychiatrist and a neurologist. And since I've been a little kid, he's always said that to me. He was like, Jeremy, clean your room. The outside, the disorder around you is creating disorder inside your brain. I think that
he just gave me the Amnon Gimpel's 10 Commandments. Have you seen those?
The 10 Commandments for Attention Deficit Disorder.
Yes.
He had to develop those raising me. Do you understand? He's a genius, world expert on ADHD because he had to raise Danny.
He told me he
Micah,
just presented it at Harvard.
At Harvard, he was invited to Harvard to teach there because he's really he became a world expert of attention deficit disorder, raising me and my brothers. And so,
so he's a psychiatrist. Go ahead.
So one of his laws is order. You have to have order outside you, or in your room, in your office, on the desk that you're working. And as you organize your desk, you're actually in some ways organizing your mind. And I feel like that's very beautiful. You see this return on the outside of the land of Israel. The Jewish people returning to the land of Israel is somehow an inner process of us returning spiritually to God. You see that all around the world, the Amazon is being burned to the ground. Deserts are spreading. If you look at maps, you can see the deserts are growing in the world. Like there's global warming, climate change, whatever you want to call it. The deserts, the hot places, the places where nothing grows, where death is, that's growing, and all of the green where oxygen and life is getting smaller, except for one place. Do you know where it's not happening? Not happening in Israel. Israel continues to plant more and more trees. Ari and I, we are literally at the edge of the desert. We are where the desert...
The last mountains,
where the mountains of Judea...
You call it, I want to ask you this, you call it Sfar Hamidbar?
Sfar Hamidbar.
I would have thought it was Sfat Hamidbar.
Well, that's just not the word. Sfat Hamidbar.
So what does Sfar Hamidbar mean?
It's the border. It's like right at the edge of the desert. It's the edge of the desert. And all of a sudden, you look at the ground below us, and before we got here, there was like rocks and thorns and kind of like rough kind of dirt, well, almost like sandy dirt. And all of a sudden, you start seeing trees here. We are pushing back this desertification that's covering the world. And that's really an outside process that's reflecting an inside process. And somehow encoded in the prophecies of the Bible is that the planting and the settling of this land is a part of the process of returning to ourselves as we are returning to God in Elul.
Just a beautiful thought I read from Rav Biederman about Elul. He talks about that, he gives an analogy. He gives these wonderful analogies and says, this is what the nimshal is. This is what the expression of that analogy is really about. He says there's a fisherman puts bait inside a net, a big net. And then the fish are in the net and they grab the bait and then the net gets them. And one says to the other, it's too bad we didn't just grab the bait and then take off. They didn't realize that they're already in the net when they grab the bait. And what's the nimshal? That during the year, we fall, we hit the ground sometimes pretty hard, we make a lot of mistakes, and we say, oh, we shouldn't have made that mistake. What we don't understand is that we're already in the net. What was determined on Rosh Hashanah, on the new year, when the decrees are made for the coming year, those mistakes that we made during the year were already decreed from then. We needed to go through that for whatever reason. The time to actually be able to escape the net, the time to be able to have the decrees on a higher level of reality is during Elul. This is when that reality is programmed.
That is so deep. I don't even know what to do with that. I'm going to have to think about that for a while because life is such a domino effect. Like one thing happens and then it hits another thing, and it's like we're just like acting out something of now today that really started like, I don't know, months ago. And if we really take what he's saying seriously, that Rosh Hashanah is a time spiritually where we can stop the domino effect. Stop it. And we're going to start a new domino effect for this year. It's like we're just like being acted upon and we are like reacting to the realities of this world. And Elul is like, wait, we're holding up. We're starting over. And Rosh Hashanah comes and we're like setting the new year into motion.
Let me just ask you a question about that, right? Elul is a time for cheshbon nefesh.
Soul searching.
Soul searching. Looking within, seeing how to fix ourselves, how to return. How do you do that? I sometimes trip myself up a little bit by needing things systematized and codified and like, so this is how you do that. What do you do to go about doing that?
That is a great question. So the Eish Kodesh the Rebbe of Piaseczna, the rabbi of the Warsaw Ghetto,
Koinimus Kalman,
who is probably right now the biggest influence in my life over the last couple of years. He gives, it's a really basic shita, it's a system. And he says, what you need to do is you need to think of yourself. Let's say your name is Ari. And it says, who do I want Ari to be next year? Who do I want this guy to be? Who is that Ari? And then you have to envision it in your mind, every aspect. What does Ari look like? How is Ari behaving to his wife? How is Ari behaving to his children? How is Ari learning Torah? What is Ari learning? What are the attributes that he really has right now that Ari next year he wants to look totally different and be that?
I know you're just giving me an example, but this is getting really personal.
Well, I'm just giving you. I mean,
I understand.
He gives,
and
the
then
example,
and then what you're saying is to parallel or look at who you are now compared to who you want to be, and the differential there. You're saying, right?
Yeah,
and how to get there.
I think just the first step is to first visualize. Meaning some people are just like walking around, bumping into things and stumbling out of bed and just doing their thing. And they're just like lost in the momentum and the inertia of life.
I'd like that more, because what my initial thought would be is to look at myself and say, what are all the things I'm falling short on, that I don't like about myself, that I'm upset about?
It's the exact
opposite. And what you're
opposite.
saying is the opposite, and that sounds healthier.
Yeah. It's saying envision the best you that you want to be. And don't fear like, oh, I'm just never going to get there because of X, Y, and Z. No barriers. No filters. Who is the dream Ari that I could imagine in my mind? That's step one. But then the next step, he gives a few different words in the paragraph that I'm speaking of. He talks about midot. He talks about hasagot. He talks about attributes that you want to work on, your character traits. He talks about the things that you actually want to learn. What are these? So, but I think that each person really has to do that practice on their own. They have to make like that when they're envisioning themselves, categories will come to mind. What do you look like? That's a very physical reality. Your Rav Kook talks about in Orota Tshuva that the beginning of Tshuva, if you really want to enter into the process of returning to yourself, it starts with the body. You cannot really get control of your life if your body is like just out of control.
I wouldn't say cannot, but it is very, very hard.
I mean, what he says is the first step of tshuva is that maybe you can skip over the first step. I don't know, but I feel like that's a very fundamental, basic thing.
The reason I wanted to make that qualification is because I think not infrequently about this Rav Kahana from Canada, and he had a brain stem stroke where he was literally trapped inside his body. He functioned mentally perfectly, but he couldn't move anything but his eyelid. You can still do tshuva from there.
Right. That's true. He says the first step of tshuva is with the body. Maybe you can actually skip over the first step, do 2, 3, 4, 5, and have all these other steps.
He's right that's the first.
Okay. Anyway, so that's okay. Bottom line is everyone has to do that avoda of really envisioning yourself and then breaking down the categories because some people need to do things with their parents and other people don't have parents, and some people need to do things with their siblings or their children. Each person has their own vision of their own life that they have to then work on, and I think that is the first step. But
just one thing.
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's on the subject.
Yeah.
I was sitting with your dad yesterday, and he shared something with me that was sort of an intuitive truth, but he codified it even more. And for me, even before the body thing, it is time, scheduling. In order to do this cheshbon nefesh, you need to first schedule it in your calendar. If you don't have it scheduled in, then it's not going to be done right. You're not going to be able to set aside a cocoon of time that you can really focus, at least for me. And I think in the West, it's not just me. It's the Western culture and life that moves so fast. If you don't have your time under control, you're not going to be able to really give the thought and focus and energy. You got to schedule it in.
Okay, so I mean, you've just now opened the Pandora's box. It's going to come now. Get ready. The best time to do it is at about 4:30 in the morning. I'm just being honest. I wake up now, Baruch Hashem, very early in the morning. And it's a part of the actual guidance that the Shulchan Aruch gives us. It says the first law codified in Jewish law is to wake up, to awaken the dawn, to wake up before the dawn. So it's not that the sunrise hits you and then you're reacting and waking up, but you are proactively waking up and you awaken the dawn. And in that time, it's the most beautiful time of the day where your kids are asleep, your wife is asleep, no one is calling you from work, because it's too early in the morning and it is actually quiet.
I mean, if you're really going to say you start at 4:30 and that's when it starts,
I don't always get
then
4:30.
No, I understand.
Sometimes it's 5:30,
I'm not talking
sometimes
about
it's
you.
5.
I'm not talking about you. I'm saying though that for me and for most people, it doesn't really start at 4:30. It starts the night before. If you go to sleep at the right time, that's why Vayehi Erev, Vayehi Boker, Yom Rishon every day starts with the evening. Right.
True.
So it's about the evening before, going to sleep at the right time, doing the things before. But
anyway,
I digress.
Well, what I wanted to say.
This is a very passionate subject for me.
No, I think it's a beautiful subject, and I think you should read my book. So all you need to do, Ari, is you go to the landofisrael.com. Landofisrael.com. There's a link there. You go any of my YouTube music videos. There's a link there. You download. You get all 12 songs of the album.
I don't have the money for it.
And all you have to do, you get the book is free. I mean, this
book is free. Fine.
Golden.
Well, I need to listen to your show. I need to read your book. I need to watch. I mean, just following your broadcasting is a full-time job.
Full-time job. All right. So now let me go back to Elul now. So that was a good question. That's my answer. I want to go back to it. I said that Elul for me in its energy is like spring training. And obviously everyone comes up with their own ways that they see the world through their own upbringing. For my father, sports was very a big part of my childhood. I was on every sport team that I could imagine: soccer, baseball, tennis, swimming, football. Basketball. I was like on teams, constantly developing my sports skills. I don't know why. My father, I think it was like a part
Which
of
is
his,
curious because every time we play basketball, I thoroughly defeat you.
That is definitely not true. You're bigger than me, so one-on-one, maybe you can win. Right. But if we were like on a court with teams, I'm clearly a more valuable player.
You're more clutch. Really, you have an ability. If you're down by 2, you'll nail the 3 and win for your team.
All right, that's fun. Anyway, so spring training, why do I come up with that analogy? I want to say that I was talking to a friend of mine named Yossi Sawson, who's just one of the coolest people that I know. I love the man just deeply. And he said this one line that really struck me. He said, discipline equals freedom. And I'm like, yes. Yes, write that down, Jeremy. Discipline equals freedom.
I told Yossi that, but okay.
Because what does that mean? Most people think, I don't want to be disciplined. I just want to do whatever I want. I don't want to be under this, under the law, under some sort of thing. Let me be what I want to be. I want freedom. And it's like, no, if you wake up early and you're disciplined with yourself, you have the freedom to then do the things that you really need to do, the things you really want to do.
By the way, that's why they call it the yoke of Torah. The yoke, where you put a yoke on an oxen. If you have an ox has no yoke, then it just runs around, slams its head into trees, causes damage. You put a yoke on it, and it's actually able to accomplish and to do something in the world. That's Yishai Fleischer. Go ahead.
And so this is a quote that has been dear to my heart for many years by Abraham Joshua Heschel. Here's what he writes. Self-respect is the fruit of discipline. The sense of dignity grows with the ability to say no to oneself. Now, sometimes you got to take what Abraham Joshua Heschel says and just analyze it for a second. Self-respect is the fruit of discipline, meaning what happens if you're able to discipline yourself and you're able to set goals for yourself and keep to it and work on it and say, this is not kosher. I'm not eating it. Period. I'm just not going to eat it. Even if I'm at a wedding of a friend that doesn't exactly keep kosher and it looks so delicious, I'm not eating it. What happens is self-respect is the fruit of discipline. You start to respect yourself. But then not only that, the sense of dignity grows with the ability to say no to oneself. You start feeling an inner dignity when you're able to take control of your own life.
And I think the reason for that is, forgive me for interrupting, the reason for that is when you say no to oneself, the wording there is you say no to oneself. That means the higher you, the intellect, is able to say no to the body. And dignity is when you are a human being, when you're not an animal. You're a human being, and you're able to say, no, I am my intellect, and my intellect is going to be compassionate, but nonetheless strict with this animal body that I have.
And so I think that once we start living in that rhythm, it just opens things up. And so the first step of the process was first to envision who we could potentially be. But then Rav Kook teaches something really beautiful in Orot HaTshuva. It's like, I wish that I was smart enough to know which chapter it was in, but I just have it in my notes here and I didn't write down the chapter. It's somewhere like around chapter 7 or chapter 8. But he says that as you begin this process of tshuva, your soul will light up and all of a sudden blemishes will become more apparent that you didn't even know existed, because all of a sudden you're envisioning this beautiful image of yourself and you start working towards that and you're like, oh my goodness, I really need to fix that. And Rav Daniel told me this really beautiful analogy, this parable to really understand that. He says sometimes you're driving your car and the windshield is perfect clear. And all of a sudden, like a bug will splatter on the windshield. And all of a sudden, the windshield is clear. And then all of a sudden, you're able to see that bug splatter quite clearly. And this process of inner work, as we're sort of cultivating the land of Israel outside of us and cultivating the inner weeds inside of us, all of a sudden, the neshama starts to grow in light, starts to kind of, grow inside us, and inner blemishes then start to happen. So the first step that you wanted to do, Ari, was like, oh, I'm bad at this, I'm bad at this, I'm bad at that, I'm bad at that. Shouldn't start with that. The first beginning process is the positive, and then from that, the negative will appear.
I really appreciate that on a personal level. I needed to hear that right now, because I'm in a place right now where at least my experience and perception is somehow like when we're at this farm and we don't wash the car for a month, my windshield is so full of dirt and dust that a large wasp can splat itself on my wind and I wouldn't even see it, right? So like to try to do internal work from that place is really hard. But if I just sort of take a quantum leap over that and I say, what do I just envision myself? Don't get down on myself about how dirty the windshield is. Focus on what I'd
on the car issue. Sometimes I drive to like a normal mall in Jerusalem and I see my car next to other normal people's cars. And I don't know what to do other than to just giggle because my car is like, there's like a thick layer of dirt, dust.
And after Shayna, my wife, is still in the place of fighting that. She gets the car washed like every couple weeks.
Yeah,
and at a certain point, I think you're just like
hands up.
It is what it is. When you fill it up with gas, wash off the windshield and the windows.
All right, I'm done talking for now. I know, Ari, you're going through a lot. Your house is under construction. You're living all over the place. What's going on? So,
first of all, there are things that, of course, I can't really fully share because a lot of personal things are going on.
Oh, let's talk about the personal things. We do share
our personal things.
I want the more personal, the better.
Yeah, you often get me in trouble for exactly that reason. But, there's things that you just can't talk about too much.
How's your marriage?
Marriage is going well. Thank God.
Great, good.
Thank God. But
good.
That's not what well, you know what? On some level,
it's your Shana Rishona is over because there was one Shabbat at the very beginning, right after you were married. And, there's a Jewish custom that you're not allowed to leave your wife for the first year of marriage. Even if you have business affairs, you're just not supposed to either don't leave on your business affairs or take your wife with you, but you're supposed to be together. You're together forever on your first year. And there was one Shabbat where Ari and I both somehow ended up in Efrat for Shabbat. And someone came up to me and they're like, I don't understand what you and Ari go spend Shabbat together everywhere. And I was like, listen, it's our Shana Rishona. After his...
Right. Well, I'll tell you, there was about a week during this year that we were apart.
Yeah, it happens sometimes.
That we were apart, but the story I sort of wanted to share, I think I touched on it in the last program, but I want to touch on it again because it has been such a sandbox. In the sense, what do I mean by a sandbox? Programming terms. Sandbox is like where you experiment, where there's a different scenario or situation. It's been this story I want to share is the reason we were apart for that week. And it's been a really difficult challenge. And this is of course, the Michelle story. Who is Michelle? Very briefly, when our partners came out here, there was, the mandate for this land was agriculture and tourism, and they were raised in Hebron and Kiryat Arba, and there was this guy named Michelle, bald guy, 4 teeth. He was 17 years in the French Legion, which is a pretty crazy legion of mercenaries. It's like a crazy army thing. And he comes to Israel. He marries a woman. He has 5 kids. They get a divorce. His oldest kid dies. He becomes an alcoholic and a drug addict. Our partners, who have beautiful neshamas and tremendous amounts of compassion, they invite him to come out here and they say, listen, we'll put a roof over your head. We'll put food on the table. They put a lot more into him.
No alcohol allowed.
No
he
alcohol.
Actually cleaned himself up.
Right. He cleaned himself up. And in exchange, he sort of took care of the sheep and did some stuff around here. But it cleaned him up, and it was a really, really healthy thing. Now, when I came out here, at first, I was the first one living out here. So I'm living here at the top of the mountain, and the only other person for like 1.5 kilometers in any direction is Michelle. So Michelle, I gave him a lot of tzedakah. We were friends. He taught me how to milk a sheep. We were like, we were friends. He taught me a lot of things. I was very kind to him. Anyways, this past January, he comes to me and says, Ari, listen, I had heard he had asked a lot of people for this. He said, I found out that there's over 1 million shekels that's owed to me by the French Legion. I need to go to France to collect this money. I will be able to buy myself a new set of teeth. I can pay all my back child support, but I'm not able to leave the country because there's an ikuv yetziah min haaretz on me. There's a legal prevention for him leaving the country because he owes so much money in child support. He may just not return. So he needed someone that was willing to sign as a guarantor for him, that if he doesn't return, that they will, pay the money. And I really I almost didn't think twice about it at all.
Well, that's not true because I told you not to sign it. Michelle came to me.
You always make sure to say that.
Michelle came to me and I was like, absolutely not.
Okay.
I'm sorry. If you're not good enough to pay for your children's child support, what makes me think you're going to come back and be loyal to me? That was very simple math.
Right. Well, my thought was maybe he just simply couldn't afford the child support. Whatever it was, it doesn't matter. I didn't think like that because also when I went to the office to sign, they said that they haven't had in 15 years. Well, they said at the time they had never had the situation where someone didn't return to the country.
You know what it is? My wife is a divorce lawyer and she deals now in mediations between couples to try to sort of keep, I didn't ever realize this, but it says that to bring peace between husband and wife is of the greatest mitzvahs in the Torah. And I was like, well, it's interesting. My wife is a divorce lawyer, like, oy vavoy. But you can actually, it's in some ways, it's the highest level of bringing peace between a husband and wife while they're getting divorced. If you can actually mediate that chaos, protect and shield the children, it's a high level. So I've just seen a lot of scummy things in my life. Exactly.
Yeah, sure. I got it. But for me, I would just rather die than betray you or any friend of mine or anyone. Really, on such a foundational level. Sometimes people steal, sometimes they cheat, but to be willing to take a bullet for someone and then have that person be the one pulling the trigger, right? I mean, I just couldn't imagine that he would do such a thing.
It's a high level of betrayal.
A high level, perfidy defined, like Shakespearean type. Anyways, our listeners could probably tell where this is going. He leaves the country and he blocks all of us on WhatsApp. And don't hear anything. And I'm like, okay, it wasn't just me, by the way. It was our partner Roni's brother. He signed also. The 2 guarantors were needed. And, the day he was supposed to come back, even though he blocked us on WhatsApp, his children made a cake. He cleaned up the whole place here. We were just tremendous kindness and compassion to this man. Anyways, he blocks us on WhatsApp. And then a Bedouin from the nearby village who was friends with Michelle didn't have even the courage to send me or us the message. He sent a message to this Bedouin in the nearby village saying, listen, I'm not coming back. I'm staying here. Goodbye. Okay. And when I heard that, I was like, oh, I didn't even think or consider what the ramifications of that would be, but what the ramifications of that were
that Ari and I have been best friends since we were 18, 19 years old. And I got to say, I told you so. That was, for me, that's what it was.
That was a sweet moment for you. I got it. But we're now stuck. I am him. Shayna and I owe that child support now. Which, by the way, so...
We're going to help you. Don't worry. It'll be fine. We'll all do it together.
Yeah, I've heard the song before. Anyways, so that was like a really rough thing to have happen. I mean, it also sort of... there were a lot of silver linings that were so silver that it actually overwhelmed the negativity
really?
At times.
Like what?
At times. And at times, believe me, I wanted to knock the last 4 teeth out of his mouth. I went through those moments also when I was sort of disconnected from the truth of the world, which is that Hashem runs the world and that everything that happens is a blessing. You can't, I'm not always in that headspace, right? In this parsha, it says to wipe out Amalek from under the heavens. And why does it say mitachat l'shamayim? Because what is Amalek there to try to convince us of? That everything that happens is mitachat l'shamayim. Everything is in this world. Everything is rational and linear, and it makes sense in this world. But what do we remember? That it's ma'al hashamayim, that Hashem is really running the world. So it was a challenge for me to deal with that, but also having Shayna, who it would be reasonable for her to say, we're just starting our life and our family. We're building a house. We have all these expenses, and you are financially crippling our family with your insanity. Not for one moment. She was always supportive. She was always loving. And I was so like hit hard by this. She was actually like, we need to get a lawyer. We need to figure out how to do this. There's really no way out of it.
What a good partner you have.
Yeah, she was really, really, so just that alone was worth a good amount right there. But I had to,
well, you missed a week.
So that's why I missed the week.
The country didn't let you out.
Because now there's an ikuv yetziah min haaretz on me. I'm not legally allowed to leave the country. I'm not allowed to leave the country. So we were going to go visit her grandmother, a Holocaust survivor. She's 96. It was like an important trip for us. And so I realized that I had this on me 3 weeks ahead of time. I figured I would just need to do what this guy had to do. I need to get guarantors for me that I can leave the country. And if I don't return, then it's on them. So I went to you and you said, yeah, you'll do it. And by the way, don't think it didn't cross my mind how funny that would be if I left the country and then sent a message to you through a Bedouin in a nearby village.
I'm not coming back.
I'm not coming back. But anyways, they were so confused at the bureaucratic offices in this country of what to do here, what it was all about, like, because there's no precedent for this, that one thing and another thing, and I needed to get another guarantor, and then I needed to get his wife's signature, and it went so long, it dragged out that we had a ticket that was booked, that I actually missed that flight. And I said, Shana, you need to go. You go ahead. So I missed that flight. So at the beginning, when it was just about money, I was really able to work that through.
Money comes, money goes. It's from Hashem.
Yeah. Also, I just look at my life. I'm taking an accounting. I've made a lot of quote unquote mistakes. We don't need to go into the whole range of free will, but I'm living in the Garden of Eden. My best friend is right over the mountain. I'm married to a wonderful girl. I'm still well in Hashem's debt. Like in the ultimate truth, I'm well above what I deserve, even with this financial hit, you know? But then once I'm like working through this whole money thing and I really got sort of zen about that, you know, I came to peace with it and okay, the money and we'll figure it out and we'll spread it out. When I had to go every single morning, drive in from the farm to Jerusalem, everyone hates bureaucratic offices. And I had to stand in line with all these men that are having to pay mezonot, child support. So I'm in a long line of men all paying child support. And I'm paying child support for this guy's kids.
Oh, God.
And and it's just so not rational what they're putting me through. That's when I started to lose my attributes a little bit. That's when I started being filled with rage and anger. And that's when I realized, actually, now I'm in the ring. It's like we're UFC fighters and Hashem is training us in life. And now this is where the fight happens. If I can stand in line and waste morning after morning after morning dealing with this thing and still be happy and still be filled with faith and know that this isn't coming at the expense of all the things I wish I could do. I wish I could be learning Torah right now. I wish I could be at the farm with groups. No. This is where I'm supposed to be. This is the perfect place for me to be right now. So I had these moments while I was standing in line where everything is perfect. And even one guy stood in front of me in line and all the women that worked there knew this story. They all knew me. It was like, and I'm talking to this guy in front of me and I told him the story and he's like, you never sign as a guarantor for anyone. That should be the lesson. No one should ever sign as a guarantor. You never sign as a guarantor for anyone. And I thought to myself, that's just a sad life. I would rather, you need a guarantor, Jeremy? I'm going to sign as a guarantor. Other friends of mine need a guarantor, depending on whether I truly trust them or not. I'm going to be much more discriminating. But to say that I would never stick my neck out for a friend, it's almost a life not worth living.
I think
to not be able to stick your neck out for a friend.
I think the calculation is by teeth. Meaning the more teeth, the more chances.
That's not nice. That's not nice.
Well, you know what? We heard that he might have actually died.
That's true. That's
like
true.
Talk about divine retribution.
But I don't know that he died, though. We don't know that.
Well, that's what that Bedouin told us.
That's a Bedouin rumor, okay?
Bedouin rumor.
It's a Bedouin rumor.
Anyway,
but the point is, there is a culture in Israel that people have a phobia in this country about being a friar, which is like a sucker. Nobody wants to be a sucker. And sometimes when you're so afraid of being a sucker, sometimes it comes at the expense of other people and you make them a sucker. And I came to the realization, I don't mind being a sucker again and again. I don't want to be, I'll try not to be, but I'd rather be a sucker 50 times than cause another Jew, another human being to be a sucker at my expense. So finally they said, okay, you can leave. I had to change the ticket. That was many hundreds of dollars. We missed the first week of our trip, which we were going to go on a little trip together. Second week was family. First week was a little another honeymoon thing, where we were going to go to Ben and Jerry's factory headquarters.
Oh, you guys are so cute.
There was a full week of things that are planned, but the only thing we remember that we didn't really get to do
is the Ben and
Jerry's factory. And so we missed that, and we missed many other things.
I will never forgive Michelle for you missing the
Ben and Jerry's factory. Yeah, that is, it was truly devastating. But then I say to myself, okay, how much ice cream can you eat? We'll get a bunch of flavors and we'll reenact it here at the farm. It's not the same thing. I get it. But anyways, finally they said, okay, you can leave.
No, they probably have experimental flavors at the factory that they don't have marketed.
You just made that up. You know about the experimental flavors in the Ben & Jerry factory?
If
I just made that, you're trying to say, what can I say to make it where he can't fully replicate the thing? That's what I'm going to say.
No, I'm just saying, if I had a factory of Ben & Jerry's ice cream, I would definitely have experimental ice creams there that people can come to the museum and taste the stuff that you can't get anywhere else.
You do that. That's something, by the way. Rosh Hashanah is coming up. You need to work on this.
We should do that on the farm. Experimental ice creams here at the visitor center.
Experimental ice creams, but we're right now talking about your attribute shortcomings, and here's one of them. Okay. I'm trying, one of my greatest idols in my cheshbon nefesh is this phone. It sucks me in. It's hard for me to disconnect from, because there's things that I do need there, WhatsApp, etc. But there's also a lot of stupid things that just distract me and I'm addicted to, and it's an idol. So I finally realized, what could I do? It's an experiment. I'm going to get this Galaxy smartwatch. Last thing I need, another device? Another gadget, but I got it, and it's actually been really good. I've been able to disconnect from my phone because the WhatsApps come into the watch, and I can't do stupid things on it. It's been really great. But the first thing you say when you see your watch, it looks stupid. It looks like it's going to not work. And you had to be like Amalek and throw water on the fire there. You need to work on that. But anyways, they finally let me leave the country. They said I could leave the country. And so, but what do I need to do? I need to pay 20,000 shekels in cash to this government agency. So I need to go to this. I went to this window. I borrowed 9,000 from you, 11,000 from some. I had a stack of money like I was in an international drug cartel. And by the way, at the time, this amount of money was the majority of money that I had in the world. And I needed to go and take this huge one. It's one thing to give a credit card and act like it's a piece of plastic. Yeah. But to go to this governmental window in Kfar Saba, which was an hour and a half away, and stand in line with the number in order to put 20,000 shekels into this bureaucrat's hands, it wasn't like I'm going to get paid it back when I return. It was towards the massive debt.
It's to leave the country to go. It's like you left for 10 days, it's 1,000 shekels a day.
You want to leave? No, 2,000 shekels a day.
Oh, God.
You want to leave? 20,000 shekels cash. And as I was handing it over, deeply painful, but I had one of those moments, and I'm starting to believe that these little moments of light and clarity and truth are priceless. Priceless. And I had this moment where I looked at this, and I'm like, wow, I am really emotionally attached to that pile of paper. Emotionally attached. This is causing me more anguish and pain than real things in the world that should cause me true anguish and pain. And having that clarity and reorientation about money, it was a good thing. And don't think that the thought didn't escape, didn't enter my mind. As I came back here, Shane is in America. I got back to the farm, and there's all these Judean 17-year-olds. We have volunteers that are coming out here all the time. By the way, when I see these kids, Elad and Chesed and Mizmor, these they're so Judean. Yeah, I don't know what else to say.
To me, they're all messianic potential.
Yes,
all
every one of them is a Mashiach in training.
When I
see these young guys, my heart is so filled with love and gratitude and hope and excited expectation for the future, that this is what it looks like. That's what I have to say to Americans. The price of Aliyah, whatever the price is, just to raise your children in this place and have them come out like I see these kids coming out, it's worth it 1,000 times over. So I had to come back, and there's this bonfire, and I was like, wow, think about how many Jews were stuck in Nazi Germany when the gates shut. And I'm stuck in Judea. I'm stuck in Jerusalem. I'll take that. I'll take that. Okay. So I felt like there were so many lessons that I got from this, so much growth potential. And each one, I sort of put a price tag on it. And it was approaching the actual amount of the debt as far as the tuition for the growth that this experience, because it was a unique situation. It's something that's still ongoing. We're still having to figure out how we're going to do this thing. But anyways, I thought that was an idea worth sharing. But just one last thing about it. One last thing. Whenever I found myself struggling with it, I went back to the old rule that I have, which is you can replace any negative emotion, anger, hatred, with compassion. And so I said, how can I have compassion on this guy? And I said, well, at one level, at least I don't need to wake up being him. He has to wake up every morning being him. And even if it's not in the forefront of his consciousness, something like that is just corrosive and deteriorating for the soul that he has to live with. And I really feel bad for him, that he has to live knowing that he is such a spineless, perfidious, betraying dude. Anyways, so, and by the way, Parsha, you know, we wanted to talk about Ki Tetzei.
Well, before we get there, I just wanted to ask one last question, because then it's going to go into the Parsha that I wanted to say. When you were in the line with all of these men that are paying child support, you said, it's like I'm in the rink at a UFC fight. What was the analogy there? I didn't really understand the analogy.
The analogy was that it's not like I'm here standing in line and I could be doing all of these other great things that I would like to do, that are important service of God, my work in the world, learning Torah, taking groups around, being at the farm, doing what we do. No. I said, this is where it matters. Now I'm in the ring. Now, as far as my real service of Hashem, am I going to say, Hashem, you're in charge, this is where I've ended up, and I'm going to look around and try to bring as much light and have as much faith in you that I can actually be happy right here. This is where it matters the most. When you're in such a situation of standing in line to pay child support for 5 kids that aren't yours every single morning, it's like such a perversion and travesty of justice, and to say, but there is justice in the world, and Hashem is in charge, and that's what I mean by being in the ring. So
you're like in the ring. In the rink without gloves.
You say rink. It's not a roller skating rink. It's a fighting ring.
Oh, ring with a G. Listen,
Yeah.
I moved here when I was 11.
I know.
Okay, so here we go.
But you know, we're segueing to the Parsha.
But I'm segueing.
Okay.
I brought up the UFC thing exactly to segue
Fine,
into what I wanted to say about the Parsha. So this week's Parsha, here's what it says.
Speaking of segue, my father bought a Segway. Seeing my father
I love
on a
your
Segway,
dad.
yes, seeing him on a Segway with that helmet on is one of the, I don't want to say cute, it's because maybe it's
priceless is the word.
It's a delicious thing.
Really amazing. All right, so here's what the Parsha says. Ki tetzei lamilchama. You're going to go out to war. And I was like, wow, UFC, fighting, war, and Emunah, it's like all interconnected. And I was thinking, there are laws of how you have to go out into battle. And I remember Ari and I were serving in the military. It was like maybe 3 years ago. We were actually going out on a mission in the middle of one of the wars around Gaza. And I was like learning the laws of war in the Rambam right before we were going out, just to sort of like refresh my mind. Here's an opportunity to fulfill commandments, halachas in the Torah that I don't ever get to fill out, because how often do I actually yotzeh lemilchama? How often do I go out to war? And one of the halachas that the Rambam brings down, which I really touched my heart, was no fear. You are not allowed to go into battle if you have any fear in your heart. That's a law. And I was like, well, every once in a while the Torah gives us these emotional commands, like love the Lord your God. How can you be commanded to love? Love is an emotion. You can't just command love, and there's a whole world of explanations about that. But I was thinking, okay, you're not allowed to go into battle with any fear. And I was thinking, that's not just a command. It's really amazing guidance of going into war, because you can go into war fearful and you're sort of like pulled back, anxious, nervous. But if you go in almost anticipating the encounter with the enemy, you're waiting for that Hamas guy to show his head. It's far more aggressive, and you will be more successful in your mission if you somehow have the ability to banish the fear.
Fear versus desire. That's always the old school juxtaposition, the old school dilemma. Are your fears stronger than your desires? And that's why Yaniv Gabai, when we were down in Gaza, I had a conversation with him, and he said something that stuck with me. He said, these officers, they stand up and they say, Bezrat Hashem, please God, we'll get home to our families in peace and be careful. No. We have to want to be there. We have to want to be there, want to fight the wars of Israel. Just one thing, Jeremy. I'm watching a Netflix thing with Shayna. It's called Our Spy or The Spy. I forgot what it's called.
I don't watch Netflix.
About the spy of Eli Cohen.
I don't watch TV.
Oh, you're very holy. You don't watch TV. Okay, it's a documentary that you should watch about Eli Cohen, the spy for Israel. And you know who plays Eli Cohen? Sacha Baron Cohen.
Oh, really?
Unbelievable.
Is he good?
Fantastic.
Really?
fantastic, and it's been a real Musser thing for me.
Really?
Because this guy wanted it.
Wow.
He wanted it. And Sacha Baron Cohen, he plays Ali G in Borat, and I heard him say, I can get into character really well, and I can stay there for a few hours, maybe a day. 5 years, this man was Kamel Thabit. And it totally and he did that for Am Yisrael. He did that for the Jewish people. He wanted it, and he died. But the information, he was possibly one of the most successful spies in world history.
Wow.
But anyways, go ahead.
Very interesting. What's the name of that series?
It's called The Spy.
I might watch TV just for that.
Yes.
So back to what I was saying, you're not allowed to have fear. So before I go out, I'm like getting myself ready and kind of psyching myself out. And then we get on this armored vehicle that's taking us to the edge of the Gaza border. Now, we had intel that there were tunnels that were being dug under the Gaza wall. At that time, we didn't realize that there was an entire network of tunnels. We heard that there was 1 or 2 tunnels. How could the Hamas, that's millions of dollars building all of these tunnels? We just couldn't imagine how many tunnels there were.
Well, that's what the humanitarian aid goes for.
Exactly. So the mission was that we were going to be positioned stealth inside a ravine where the tunnel, but in between the tunnel entrance and the Jewish communities that are about half a kilometer outside of Gaza. And then we were the buffer, meaning we would encounter the Hamas first by us. We would definitely have time to radio back to the Ishuv behind us in order to let them know, to make sure all the civilians were protected. But ideally, we encounter the Hamas and we neutralize them before they even get any closer. And so we're on our way in this armored vehicle and we're going out to war. And I remember that I was asked to say Tfilat Haderech.
I remember this.
Yeah, this is a beautiful moment in my life. And I'm like, wow,
This is right after the drunk Russian Maxim physically assaulted me for driving him so insane.
Exactly.
Yes, go ahead.
And so here we are now. We're going out to war, and I'm being given the honor, really, of saying Tfilat Haderech. And I'm like, well, that's like a lot of people here. And, you look around the carrier and, the army is a cauldron, chulent mix of all of Israel's society. So there's some Chilonim from Tel Aviv that are not so religious, or seemingly not so religious. There's kibbutz people, there's religious people. And okay, but Tfilat Haderech, okay, fine. So I get up and I start saying Tfilat Haderech. I start saying the prayer for those who are on the way. And I start, saying, Yehi ratzon milfanecha, Hashem Eloheinu v'Elohei avotenu. May it be your will before you, the Lord God. Just to keep on going on and on.
I remember this. I don't remember why I remember it.
Because it was just so powerful. And I said, Tolichenu l'shalom. You should walk with us in peace. And then a few of the more Sephardic Jews that were in there said Amen. Even though the Ashkenazic tradition is to say Amen at the end of the blessing, just that one thing, walk with us in peace, they said Amen. And then I continue the bracha, and I continue to say, V'tachazirenu l'shalom, and bring us back in peace. And by this time now, a few more people have joined the Sephardic tradition, and they say Amen. V'tatzilenu mikaf kol oyev ve'orev baderech, and save us and protect us from any enemies on the way. And by this time, the whole freaking armored vehicle is like rocking because everyone is saying Amen to this tefillah. And I was like, wow, what a beautiful army the IDF is. Sing Tfilat Haderech on our way to defend this land, to defend our people in the name of the God of Israel. Wow, because you'd think that maybe it's like a secular army, but right, you just scratch beneath the surface. All of a sudden, all of the fear was out the window and everyone was just ready to take our positions. And I feel like that's really interesting that right now we're in the book of Deuteronomy and it's saying, listen, you're going into Eretz Yisrael. It's going to be a battle. It's not like I'm just giving you the land of Israel on a silver platter. No. Ki titzeh lamilchama lo oivecha. Get ready. There's going to be enemies and you're going out to war. And it's going to be a UFC fighter in your mind, in your soul, in your heart, and with your body. Eretz Yisrael niknet b'yisurin. The sages of Israel say that the land of Israel is acquired through suffering, through hardships. And when the sages of Israel say that, I just want to tell you from personal experience, it's like a law of gravity. It's like that is going to happen. If you drop the ball, it will go down. If you try to acquire the land of Israel, it will be through hardships and suffering. In this world, here we are, out of the Garden of Eden. Everything we have in this world is broken and degenerative. We are all terminally ill. The sickness is called dying. We are all eventually going to die. And all of us are here in this world, and it is a struggle, and it's a war. And what are we going to do? One day we'll be back in the garden, but right now, when we try to plant things, kots vidardar, we're going to have thorns and thistles. It's a jungle and it's a war, and we're surrounded by jihad. And with all of that chaos, the outer altar in the temple, where all the bloods and the guts and all of the fire and the smoke, that represents that side of existence. And the only way to get through the UFC rink, the only way to get through the jungle, the only way to survive, but not only to survive, it's all of a sudden you can actually find yourself in the garden, in the middle of the jungle, if we kind of take those analogies seriously, is to grasp onto the tree of life. She is a tree of life to those who grasp her. To the Torah, Drachea darchei noam vechol netivotea shalom. I always understood that passage in Proverbs differently. It's a tree of life to those who grasp her. All of her ways are ways of noam, of pleasantness, of pleasure, of goodness. Vechol netivotea shalom. And all of her pathways are shalom. All of her pathways. But I'm like, wait a minute. I'm reading the Torah now. I'm like, this is not the pathway of peace and pleasantness. It's saying it's going to be hard and there's going to be a war. Oh, it's not the liberal translation or interpretation of that. It's not that the pathways of the Torah are all pleasant and peaceful. Sometimes the pathways of the Torah are discipline. Sometimes the pathways of the Torah are war. But what happens when you grasp onto the trees of life, the Torah ways are not peaceful. Your ways, the drachim that you walk on, the pathways that you walk on, all of a sudden become filled with noam and shalom. When we walk in the light of the Torah, we may be going out to war, but all of a sudden we're all inspired and ready to go take out the Hamas. Our pathways become filled with pleasantness. Our pathways become filled with peace.
Very nice.
That's beautiful. And that's really what a return to the pathway is. It is to walk in the light of the Torah. The Torah is the book of how to walk in the light.
Or the teaching.
The teaching, the guide. The Torah is actually, people say Bible. Bible means book.
That's
Torah
why I changed it, yeah.
Is a verb. Torah, the Torah that we read, it's not a noun. Torah is a verb. It is to guide, to teach. And as we are learning and being guided to walk in the light, halacha is Jewish law. It is to walk in the light. And as we walk in the light, the world, this dark world, becomes lit up with light, and our pathways become filled with noam and peace. And that's really the tshuva that Rav Kook talks about, that it's a song. That really, it's not like this repentance and beating ourselves and fasting. And there's this Catholic tradition that's sort of like pagan and infiltrated into the Jewish Torah mind, that somehow tshuva is this painful process. Rav Kook says,
at least into the Ashkenazic Western. I don't know if
Sfardim into the non-Jews that are listening, or the Christians, forget about it. Repentance for them is painful and it's sad, and you're beating yourself, and you got to do all these, I don't know what they do, the Hail Marys, and I don't know what. What I'm saying is Rav Kook says that tshuva is a song. And all of a sudden, when you start aligning yourself with the Torah and you start lighting it up a little bit, the world around you starts to become light. And that's really our mission here on Israel Inspired, at least from my perspective, is for me to organize my thoughts enough to walk in the light and then hopefully spread the light here.
Yeah. And just one thing I would say for me with my predisposition or proclivity towards always seeing the good in people, which, by the way, has served me very well in life, other than a few exceptions where I paid a very heavy price.
But it's the outcome has absolutely been overwhelmingly.
Yeah, it's a positive thing, and it's just a natural predisposition that God has given me that I can't take credit for. I just like people and see the good in them. The first pasuk, the first verse in the Torah, very much is speaking to the Jewish people. Ki tetzeh lemilchama, going to war, al oivecha, against your enemies. Remember, they are your enemies. It's hard for Jews sometimes to be like, we have enemies, they are against us, we need to fight them. We're always trying to make peace with our enemies, and we can't make peace with our enemies until they're our friends. We have to recognize there are certain people that want to kill us, to murder us, to wipe out the state of Israel. We have to be willing to fight, and at the same time have a hand out for true peace and love and brotherhood, still have that hope and that aspiration, but at the same time go to war against our enemies. It's a tough balance, but I think it's much better than the alternative of just looking around and seeing everyone in darkness and hate. That's not the Jewish way. That's not the natural predisposition of the Jewish people. But anyways, Jeremy.
I just love the natural predisposition of the Jewish people is what Ari Abramowitz's natural disposition
Which is Rachmanim b'nei Rachmanim. We're compassionate, the children of
Listen,
compassion.
I love the fact
Jewish
that whatever
people-
your father didn't like growing up,
That's true.
that's what the Jewish people don't like, raw meat.
The irony, though, is that now that he's getting older, he's cold all the time. I was raised in a freezing house because Jews like it cold. And now it's
now
hot.
Jews like it hot.
Now Jews like it hot. Now Jews like it hot. Anyways, that should be the title of the show. Jews like it hot.
Great.
Anyways, shalom everybody. Jeremy, thank you for doing this. I think this was great. This was cathartic for me. Maybe this will bring me out of my shell a little bit. We'd love to hear from you. Ari at thelandofisrael.com. Jeremy at thelandofisrael.com. You're coming to Israel. Bring your tours out here to the farm. Be in touch with us.
And let me tell you, any donation right now that's given to the Land of Israel Network, a donation that's given to the Arugot Farms, you get my album, the full 12 songs, and the ebook. It's a $25 donation and above. Any donation that comes in is literally breathing life into the network. It's breathing life into this farm. It is helping us do our mission. And if you feel as though these broadcasts are bringing light into your life, help us spread the light.
Yeah, you can go to thelandofisrael.com and there's a donate page right there. Also, we're about to launch, I guess you could call it somewhat of a campaign. You know, we're trying to finish off the promenade, the Tayelet, the Judean Tayelet, the Arugot Tayelet. And so we're about to really push to finish that up. So if you want to be a part of that, you could reach out to us also. Love all of our listeners very much, and shalom from Judea.
I call for a vote.
I'm not voting for her.
Only an idiot would vote for me.
Well, I didn't vote for you.
You should know who to vote for.
Who are you going to vote for in the upcoming election? Hi, this is Josh Haston, host of Israel Uncensored on the Land of Israel Network. Full election news and analysis that you're not going to get anywhere else. That's the Land of Israel Network at thelandofisrael.com. Keep it locked in.
If you vote